got this information from a book called Tarot Deciphered. So the other meaning or the other titles of the moon are the ruler of the flux and reflux, the child of the sons of the mighty, and then the signs and dignitaries, because all the tarot has astrological correspondences. Pisces, ruler, Jupiter, classical, Neptune, modern, Venus, exalted, motto, I believe. And in a quick tip, if anybody's interested in astrology, I recommend the Channing Nicholas podcast, and she has an app too, and she just breaks it down and makes it fun and really simple. So themes and keywords, illusions, subconscious reality, end of the zodiac, witchcraft, the crone, taboo, cycles, especially women's cycles. The moon runs roughly 21 days to fullness, and same with like a woman's cycle. Fear of feminine powers, fluctuations, changeability, unreliability, madness, paradox, sleep, dreams. So it really ties into our theme. Illness, non-ordinary realities, altered consciousness. So I wanted to say, personally, anytime I've pulled the moon card, I'm gonna knock on wood, I do have chronic migraine, but it doesn't mean like, oh my God, I'm gonna be sick. It doesn't mean I've pulled the virus card. Do you know what I mean? Um, I think some of these meanings are from the patriarchy. I mean, I think that's why the writers included fear of feminine powers, because before science, like people, when there would be like an eclipse, people would just get really afraid and think that it was causing terrible things. And so a lot of negative associations came about with the moon that were maybe more just a sign of patriarchy than, anything that's really actually associated with the moon. But I thought I'd just give you like traditionally what the moon means. I also wanted to talk about the imagery on the card. So you have two towers, like this kind of portal. You have this eclipse with like a moon that looks like it's sleeping. These little things are called yods coming off, and they're like the word of God. They're like blessings. They have a couple different meanings. Those are the ones I remember. There's this trail leading from the ocean into the mountains. There's a dog and a wolf. So the dog represents our domesticated side, and the wolf our wild side. So I think of one way you can interpret the moon card is a call to the wild. And this crustacean, maybe it's a lobster, the moon's power is like pulling it out from the depths of the ocean to come up onto land and walk that path. So it's a tremendous power. And so you also get this sort of the ocean typically is the unconscious, so you get that. Any thoughts before I continue?
What does the lobster mean? Did you say that? If you did, I'm sorry.
I'm trying to think. I'm just thinking like, from what I can remember, he comes out of the depths, like, because you don't normally see the lobsters like walking around on land of their own free will, right? That's not their element. Their element is the water. So to me, it's just something that's deep in the unconscious that's like pulled out by the power of the moon. And it's wild. It's not, it's not necessarily a pretty creature, the lobster, right? I mean, depending on your taste, right? It's a little bit, it's almost like an insect. Yeah. Anybody else?
I wanted
Yeah.
to so in astrology, Cancer is ruled by the moon too.
Yes.
And yeah, the lobster made me think of Cancer because it's the crab.
Okay, I'm glad you brought this up. I'm
Crustacean,
remembering.
yeah.
Yeah, oh, that's a good point, because the crab has that shell to protect it. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm glad you brought this up, because you would think that the moon card would correlate to the moon. That would be logical. But whoever made these esoteric rules, put it with Jupiter or Neptune, and Venus is
Huh.
exalted. Um, so because I've listened to one of the podcasts debate about this, and there is no really rational reason for it. So the people I listen to for tarot are like, just remember that all this stuff is made up. Like it's not like written in stone somewhere. And you can, when the more you work with the tarot, you can come to your own meetings in your own associations, right? So I'm just kind of giving forth the little white book meetings with, I hope I'm giving a little nuance as we continue, but if you're into the tarot, I would just keep going with your own like gut instincts and like really look at the art on whatever like deck that you have. But yeah, I'm glad that you
Cool.
mentioned that. The Chariot is actually the card ruled by the moon.
Oh.
And if you think about the Chariot, it's in an enclosure, if you remember what that card looked like, just like a crab is like in an enclosure. And I've heard that you would look at the Chariot and you never think pregnancy. I mean, I wouldn't. It's a guy, you know, with this two sphinxes and he's in the chariot. But because it's ruled by Cancer and there are these associations with like being in the womb and being in a space that you're going to outgrow and you're going to have to move on, you know, like the chariot, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, good questions, good comments. All right, I'm going to read two poems by Lucille Clifton that I think correlate to the moon and then get your thoughts. This was on the syllabus earlier, and some of the themes are the crone, women's cycles, and altered states of reality. So, my dream about the second coming. Mary is an old woman without shoes. She doesn't believe it. Not when her belly starts to bubble and leave the print of a finger where no man touches. Not when the snow in her hair melts away. Not when the stranger she used to wait for appears dressed in lights at her kitchen table. She is an old woman and doesn't believe it. When something drops under her toes one night, she calls it a fox, but she feeds it. Um, this poem is so beautiful to me that it's hard for me to like say anything more than what Lucille Clifton said, but does anybody have like images that strike them or anything they want to talk about or ask about? Yeah, Adriana.
I really love this one too. I really love she calls it a fox, but she feeds it because it's like she knows the duplicitous, like shifty nature of the thing, but welcomes it anyway.
Yeah, and
And I think that's a really cool, yeah.
I love that you're picking up on that line because I think it exhibits negative capability. And I haven't thought of that before because the speaker could be like, what's going on? I need to go to the hospital. Like, what is this thing? But she's comfortable with ambiguity, like comfortable being in uncertainties. It's like, I'm not sure what it is, but I'm going to call it a fox and I'm going to feed it. And you could think of that metaphorically, like when you give birth to a poem or a short story or whatever, to not judge it, and it's a wild thing and to just feed it or to think of your wildness like a fox and a wolf are very close in my mind. But to, you know, to nurture that wildness, kind of like the wolf that's in the moon card. Yeah. I love that she's like past menopause and there's this miracle of giving birth.
Yes.
I just think it's cool. I don't feel like we see enough women in film and novels, etc., past menopause bringing main character energy. And it's like life isn't over. We're gonna keep going, you know. So anybody else have thoughts about this poem or questions?
I like the line when the snow in her hair melts away.
Yeah, there's kind of this reverse aging moment that's very visual but said in a poetic way because it's not like the white hair, it's like the snow in her hair. I would love to think of my hair that way, but I don't. I'm not there.
I like the repetition of not when, not when.
Yep, yep, yep. I like the no man touches.
Yeah, everything is a negation, and yet
Yeah,
she finds like this beauty in everything opposite, like being
yeah,
cold and being like everything, not believing it, and not everything is a negative.
yeah. And then that I love how you're saying that because at the end there's that volt or that turn where suddenly those negatives are dropped and she feeds it.
Uh-huh.
But it and not are like slant rhymes with the T. So there's this paradox there. There's a relationship between the kind of negation in the first stanza and the move towards life in the second one, the embrace. Um yeah, any other thoughts? All right. All right, here's another Lucille Clifton poem that I think that relates to the moon, The Call of the Wild. And you can also think of the wild as the soul or instinctual nature, which I got that idea from this book called Women Who Run with the Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. You may know it. Yeah, I love this book. It was published in like 1992, but I think it's still relevant. It's still selling really well. So here's 1 year later by Lucille Clifton. What if then entering my room, brushing against the shadows, lapping them into rust, her soft paw extended, she had called me out? What if then I had reared up baying and followed her off into vixen country? What then of the moon, the room, the bed, the poetry of regret? So these are in the same book, I believe, because you have this fox character like reoccurring. Um, and I think of it literally like this invitation here in the moon card when you see the dog and the fox. Oh, maybe I'll send this in the follow-up email. I found this video where there's like a husky dog and two wolves, and the wolves are howling and the husky's just looking at them. And then after a few minutes, he starts howling, and that is like very moon card to me. Um, so any thoughts about this one?
I love soft paw extended, and I love the poetry of regret and
Mm,
I even like the bang. I guess I like it.
yeah, it's so precise. She has that repetition again, what if, um, and I just love that the fox is like calling her out, but like literally calling her to go outside, but also kind of calling her out like, hey, you haven't been living, you know? Um, and then she would kind of transform into a wilder version of herself. Like I had reared up Bang and followed her off into Vixen country. Um, yeah. Any other thoughts?
I just think it's curious that instead of the wolf, it's really a fox, and the
Yeah, it's a fox.
fox is she. So
Hmm.
I'm just wondering if she's turning that like, into a more feminine thing than an.
Yeah, because the second coming I thought was going to be Jesus.
Mhm.
Um, so I imagined the fox in the other poem as a male fox. I gendered it, but maybe
Mhm.
it was the second coming is a woman or gendered female, and that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just think like with baying at the moon and these kind of things, we usually think of a wolf. Even on the card, it's a wolf. That's
Yeah.
a vixen, and so I think it's just something she must be turning on its head. I don't know.
Oh, interesting. Because so just to be clear, she didn't. I don't know if she did tarot or anything. I'm just connecting the card to her, but it seems so similar to the card. It's a little uncanny, but you're right. I don't think of foxes as Wait, maybe it never says. Oh no, it does say Vixen Country, which is fox.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. It's a female fox. I didn't realize. I just looked that up.
yeah. So I don't
Mhm.
think of them howling at the moon. So that it's interesting. I don't know what to make of that. What do folks think?
I
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
sorry. I think any kind of spirit can take over an animal, so it could
Yeah.
come through in a variety of different ways. You know, metamorphosis, all kind of things. So I like that idea.
Yeah, I love that. Adriana, were you gonna say something?
I was thinking about, yeah, I guess the kind of the difference between wolves and foxes is foxes, they're sneaky. So
Mm-hmm.
they're not gonna be howling as much because
Yeah.
they don't want to be seen or
Yeah.
found. So the idea of a fox choosing to howl at the moon is kind of cool to me.
I guess she never says that it's howling. It says,
Right, not necessarily.
yeah, it says, what if I had reared up Bang? And Bang is not necessarily howling. I'd have to go and look it up in the dictionary.
Yeah.
Maybe they are synonymous. I feel like it's slightly different. Um, but that's a good point about typically we think of foxes as secretive, and I think they are. Like they dig holes, right? Whereas I'm not sure if wolves do that. I don't think they do. Um, Somehow it just seems really right for Lucille Clifton's series that it's a fox. And I can't say why. Like, I don't know. If it had been maybe because wolves, even though I think they're beautiful, they're like there's more danger there. Like if I see a fox, I'm not necessarily gonna be afraid. I'm not gonna think the fox is gonna attack me or something, you know? Um, all right, moving it along. So you could think of the moon as the call of the wild soul. And so I think of both these two more contemporary decks as like riffing off of the Rider Waite, which was, I can't remember the year now that it was made, but it was the 19th century, I want to say. And so here you have like werewolves, but then you lose the imagery of the lobster and the path and all that. But I still think it's really effective. And then on the right, you have the modern witches tarot. And so you have two people, and I guess part of their wildness is they're naked and they're putting on masks of the dog and the wolf, or maybe it's two wolves. So it's almost like a shamanistic ritual of some kind. And then instead of the lobster, I don't know who this figure is. It's like it looks kind of witchy. Um, and it's all in darkness, and there's kind of like a claw-like hand there. But I just wanted to show like how different artists kind of riff off of the Rider Waite. Okay. And then this is like a topic for further study, but as you study the tarot, you notice like repeating motifs. And here you have the two towers, and they look very similar to in the High Priestess, who is the witch of the deck, who holds secret knowledge, who maybe between the wolf and the fox, she's more of the secretive fox, you know. Um, I forget. And then behind her are these pomegranates, which kind of signify the story of Persephone and Hades and that kind of underworld journey. So she's associated with Persephone. Um, Unlike the Empress, she's kind of more associated with virginity, but I think that's kind of a misread of her. I don't think she's necessarily asexual. She's just not that archetype of the mother that the Empress is. But anyway, you see these two columns that look like the two towers, and then in the Hierophant, which these days we might call him a pope. And let's hope that's not JD Vance down there. But but anyway, so he's the Pope, and so you see these two kind of similar towers. Um, but the Hierophant is more like a public figure that holds public power like the Pope. It can be institutions of academia, the law, et cetera, et cetera. But I think of these as like portals. And then again, seeing those two towers in the moon card, I can't help but think of the tower card, which is perhaps the scariest looking card in the deck, minus maybe the devil. Um, these people, you know, the tower's on fire, it's getting blown up, the people are falling out. But you still see those yods or those blessings of God. So that's interesting. Um, so even though it looks really scary, if you pull the tower, I like to think of it as structures that weren't working anymore, that weren't built on solid foundation, are blowing up to make room for something better, to liberate you. It's not going to be fun though, right? Like it's not going to be a fun process. And then the death card, it kind of got cut off here, but there's two towers and the sun is rising or setting, depending on what you think. Um, kind of creating this little portal here. So you have this echo of the towers. Um, I'll just pause there to see if there are thoughts or questions.
Well, I think on the priestess card, the two columns too are like Masonic images of the columns in the Temple of Solomon. So I've
I
always
think you're right.
I think it's Boaz and Jocan.
I was gonna say, I don't remember what that stood for or what that means, but yeah.
Yeah. So I've always associated that with like holding up the temple, Solomon's temple. So it equals like strength with beauty. And it's curious that it's a woman. But
Mm-hmm.
also, like if that comes up in the spread, I always think if there's something you don't know,
Mm.
there's the unknown that you're not
Yeah.
aware of.
Yeah.
Oh, I always read it, but that's just my take on it.
Yeah, I think she is very aligned to the moon for that reason. I mean, there's a crescent moon at her feet. Her gown is kind of turning into the ocean. Um, and then on her head, that kind of looks like a full moon. I think that's like the crown of Horus or something like that. And I think we talked about that maybe last week where we might not have talked about it. I think it was in another class, but it signifies the triple goddess, the maiden mother crone.
Yeah, there's also a
Mhm.
lot of Egyptian like references with that, but also
Mhm.
because of the cross, I've always been told to
Mhm.
associate it with you know, the story of Pope Joan. There was a pope,
Remind me. Yeah.
I can't remember when, and it was she disguised herself as a man and became pope, but it was really
Mhm.
a woman. But it's a weird
Yeah.
story because they find out she's a woman because she gives like birth in the middle of the street.
That's
So
awesome.
it's like it's this veiled secrecy that I always interpret. I want to get it in a read.
Yes. Yeah, and then the book she's the scroll, um,
The Torah, yeah.
yeah, it's the Torah, which
I
kind of
find it one of the
almost
most
sounds
interesting.
like tarot. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just find it one of the most interesting cards in the deck. Like it's just
Yeah.
full of, I mean, they all are, but for me, that's the one that really resonates.
Yeah, I mean, and the hiddenness too, like this tapestry is like what's behind there. And I can kind of see like maybe that looks kind of like the ocean or maybe it's a mountain. I don't know. Whereas the Hierophant, he's also kind of a gatekeeper, but it doesn't really look like there's anything behind him. You know what I mean? Like it looks like just a wall, even though it is a portal kind of thing. Um, yeah, any other thoughts? All right, moving along. Uh, I'm not going to read all this quote from Women Who Run with the Wolves, but basically it's the story of La Loba who sings over the bones of the wolves and brings them back to life. And this is um kind of symbolic of the woman's soul.